The wind howled through the flat streets of a small Ohio town, a forgotten place where big dreams often faded quietly into the background noise of ordinary life. But in one tiny bedroom lit only by the glow of a cracked laptop screen, a spark was beginning to flicker, unseen by the world. Emily Carter, 9 years old, knees pulled to her chest on a threadbare mattress, stared at the screen with eyes wide and unwavering. The live broadcast showed the familiar face of Elon Musk, standing beneath a SpaceX banner, speaking with the conviction of a man who had bent reality to his will. "Our current trajectory estimates still don't guarantee Mars entry before 2085, he said, his voice echoing through her cheap speakers. Emily's lips moved silently as she scribbled in a battered composition notebook filled with numbers, arrows, and tiny drawings of rockets. Her breath caught as her pencil slowed, then stopped. "No," she whispered to herself. "That can't be right." She flipped back through the pages, checked again, and her heart pounded faster. Musk's math didn't match hers. She wasn't sure how that was possible, but every time she ran the simulations on her makeshift spreadsheet, her numbers told a different story. A better one. Her hands trembled. "Mom," she called softly, but her mother was already asleep on the living room couch, worn out from a double shift at the diner. Emily glanced back at the screen. "What if I'm right?" she murmured. "What if he's wrong?" Her mind raced faster than the booster rockets she had memorized specs for. She thought about sending an email, a letter, something, anything, to show someone what she'd found. What if nobody believed her? What if they laughed? But what if they didn't? What if she had just done something impossible? Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Because for Emily, it was this moment. Alone in a quiet house filled with second-hand furniture and forgotten dreams, she may have just rewritten the future. And it all started with a girl who refused to believe that only adults could change the world. She bit her lip and scribbled one more note: proof, trajectory B requires 37% less fuel using adjusted gravity assist. Must verify. Her eyes darted across the page as she rechecked each line. Her hands were small, but steady. Her mind was clearer than it had ever been. She knew her teachers wouldn't understand. At school, they only asked her to solve fractions and write stories about farm animals. But at night, she stayed up reading about orbital mechanics, Newton's laws, and how tiny changes could lead to monumental breakthroughs in spaceflight. None of her classmates knew. Not even her mom knew just how far her mind wandered while she was supposed to be asleep. That night, Emily stayed up until the birds began chirping, drawing diagrams, testing equations, and drafting a letter in a Word document titled, "To Mr. Musk." Her writing was childish, honest, and filled with the kind of pure conviction only a child could have. "Dear Mr. Elon Musk, my name is Emily Carter. I am 9 years old. I watch all your rocket launches. I think you are the smartest person in the world. But I think your math is a little off. I have been working on my own calculations for getting to Mars. I'm sorry if I'm wrong. I just really love space and I think there might be a better way." She printed the letter the next morning using the old, sputtering printer in the school library. She didn't have a stamp. But when her mom picked her up from school, she handed it over, nervously twisting her fingers together. "Can we mail this?" she asked. Her mom raised an eyebrow and skimmed it. "Elon Musk, huh?" she asked, grinning. "I didn't know you were still working on those Mars calculations." Emily nodded. "I've been adjusting his trajectory models. I think there's a more efficient path using a dual gravity assist near Venus. I wrote it all out." Her mom blinked, a little stunned. But instead of laughing, she smiled softly. "Well, why not? Weirder things have happened. Let's find a stamp." They mailed the letter the next day. Weeks passed. Nothing happened. Life returned to normal, Or as normal as it could be when you spent most days half listening in class while your brain ran theoretical flight models in the background. Emily started to think maybe the letter had gotten lost. Or maybe Musk got thousands like it every day. But one afternoon, as her mom drove home from work, a sleek black SUV pulled up outside their little two-bedroom rental. The driver stepped out in a suit, holding a manila envelope. "I'm looking for an Emily Carter," he said. Her mom stared at him warily. "Who's asking?" "SpaceX," he said simply. Emily was watching from the front porch, her knees shaking as she stood. She felt like her chest might explode. "That's me," she squeaked. He handed her the envelope. "Your calculations. We read them. They're interesting." He paused, clearly searching for the right words. "Actually, they're better than interesting." He crouched slightly to her level. "They made some of our engineers sweat." Emily's mouth dropped open. Her mom stood frozen. "Wait, are you saying she's right?" "I'm saying we need to talk to her." He smiled. "And I'd like permission to take this to our team for further analysis. You may have discovered a correction that could shave years off our Mars timeline." Emily looked up at her mom, eyes wide. "Can I show them?" she whispered. Her mom's voice was quiet. "I think you just did." Emily nodded slowly, holding her breath. She had no idea what would happen next, but in that moment, standing in the fading afternoon light with her worn notebook clutched tightly against her chest, she knew one thing with absolute certainty: the world had just changed. Not for Elon Musk. Not for NASA. Not for the millions watching from behind screens. But for her. The girl with nothing but a pencil, a dream, and a brain that refused to accept limits. And the story, her story, was just getting started. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Emily Carter wasn't like most 9-year-olds in her dusty Ohio neighborhood, and most days she was reminded of that fact before the school bell even rang. While other kids ran across the playground shouting about cartoons and weekend sleepovers, Emily sat on a cracked bench with her knees tucked up and a notebook balanced on her lap, scribbling equations that made no sense to anyone around her. To most of the students at Lincoln Elementary, she was that space girl, the one who talked to herself, who never raised her hand, and who always had grease or ink on her fingers. But in her mind, Emily was flying above it all. She was calculating the distance from Earth to Mars using Hohmann transfer orbits. She was tweaking delta-V margins for a rocket that didn't yet exist. She was making friends with stars that would never mock her, never laugh when she used words like gravitational slingshot or ion propulsion. Her world wasn't made of recess gossip or cafeteria cliques, it was made of physics and fuel ratios. The only person who had ever really seen her was her dad. Before he left when she was 6, he used to lie with her on the hood of their rusted sedan at night, pointing out constellations and naming them like old friends. He was the one who bought her first telescope from a flea market and taped a note to it that said, "Shoot for Mars, kid." She still had the note, creased and worn, folded neatly inside the back cover of her notebook like a secret map to somewhere better. After he left, everything changed. Her mom, Sarah, had always been quiet but kind, someone who laughed with her eyes and made grilled cheese taste like home. But when her dad walked out, Sarah shut down. She picked up 2 jobs, and her hands became rougher, her smiles rarer. She didn't have time to talk about stars anymore. Emily tried not to ask for much. She knew they didn't have money. She knew there were bills in the drawer by the microwave that stayed unopened until they couldn't be ignored. She wore the same jeans for 3 years, patched at the knees, and used school glue to keep the soles of her sneakers from falling off. But she never complained. Not once. Because she had something most kids didn't, a mission. She had read every book in the school library about the solar system twice over. Mr. Martinez, the elderly librarian who smelled like peppermint and old paper, let her borrow books from the restricted shelf even though she wasn't supposed to. He said she reminded him of his daughter, who'd gone to MIT. "You've got that spark," he said, tapping her head gently with a copy of Carl Sagan's Cosmos. "You see things the way other people don't." Emily liked Mr. Martinez. He never made her feel weird for being curious. He once sat with her for an hour explaining the basics of astrophysics just because she asked what an escape velocity was. When the heater broke in the library during winter, he let her sit behind the desk where it was warmer, sipping cocoa from a mug that said, "Ask me about black holes." But outside the library, life was lonelier. At lunch, she sat alone. During group projects, no one picked her unless the teacher forced them. They laughed when she talked about orbital decay or tried to explain how ion engines worked. "Nobody cares about space stuff," one boy said, snapping her pencil in half once. "Go talk to your aliens." That day, she didn't cry. She just went home, taped her pencil back together, and worked on her models in silence. Her bedroom was her sanctuary. The walls were covered in star charts and glow-in-the-dark stickers. A mobile of the solar system hung over her bed, and her bookshelf, built by her dad before he left, was stacked with books and cereal box prototypes of landing modules. She used old toys and scrap parts from garage sales to build tiny rovers, which she maneuvered across piles of laundry like Martian landscapes. The floor was usually littered with paper, wires, and empty juice boxes. Her mom gave up trying to make her clean it. Every evening after dinner, while her mom collapsed on the couch and half-watched reruns, Emily went into her room and turned on her old laptop. It took 5 full minutes to boot up, wheezing like it was gasping for air. The screen flickered, but it worked. That was where she ran her calculations, used free simulation software, and watched rocket launch replays on YouTube. She had a playlist titled, "Motivation, Sky is Not the Limit," filled with clips of astronauts, SpaceX test flights, and documentaries about the Apollo missions. Her favorite quote was from Sally Ride, "Young girls need to see role models in whatever careers they may choose, just so they can picture themselves doing those jobs someday." Emily had written it on an index card and taped it to her wall above her desk. At school, she didn't talk about her dreams anymore. Not really. It hurt too much when they didn't understand. When they looked at her like she was broken. But when she was alone, truly alone, she talked to the stars. She asked them questions, imagined they whispered back. "Do you think they'll ever take someone like me to Mars?" she asked once, staring at the night sky. "Even if I'm just a kid?" In her dreams, she didn't have to ask. She was already there. Walking across the red dust with a flag in her hand and her father's old message echoing in her helmet, "Shoot for Mars, kid." On the hardest days, she would take out his birthday card from when she turned 6. The one with the astronaut on the front and his messy handwriting inside. "One day, you're going to go further than I ever did. I'm proud of you already." She didn't know where he was now. Her mom never said. Just that he left to find himself and hadn't come back. Some nights, Emily imagined he was watching her from afar, checking in, hoping she'd keep dreaming. Other nights, she imagined she'd go so far into the stars he couldn't help but see her again. And maybe then, he'd be proud for real. Despite everything, being ignored, misunderstood, alone, Emily never gave up on her dream. The idea of space wasn't just about science. It was about freedom. Possibility. Escape. A place where no one judged you for asking questions. A place where you could be small and still make a big difference. So she kept studying. She kept writing. She kept building her secret plans to one day correct Elon Musk's mistakes. Not because she wanted to show him up, but because deep down, she believed the world needed dreamers who weren't afraid to try. Even if they were 9. Even if they lived in a tiny house with a leaky roof and a mother too tired to dream anymore. Even if nobody believed them. And that belief, that maybe, just maybe, she had something worth sharing, was the fire that kept her going long after the lights in the rest of the house had gone out. As the days passed, she grew more obsessed with the idea that she had found something real, something important. Her notes grew longer. Her simulations more detailed. Her vision more clear. Every page of her notebook was a step forward, a challenge issued to the grown-up world that said, "Don't underestimate me." It didn't matter that she was just a kid. What mattered was the math. What mattered was the truth. And Emily Carter had always believed that truth didn't care how old you were. It only cared that you were brave enough to find it. Monday morning rolled in like a gray fog, the kind that made everything feel slower and heavier, especially for Emily Carter, who sat on the school bus clutching her backpack to her chest, her fingers nervously tracing the edge of her zipper. Inside her bag, nestled between a dog-eared library book and a brown paper lunch, was the notebook, her notebook, the one filled with equations and charts and the idea that had been keeping her up for weeks, maybe months, maybe years if you counted how long she'd really been dreaming of something bigger than this town, this school, this routine of sitting still while her brain screamed to fly. Lincoln Elementary wasn't built for someone like her. It was a place where the best you could hope for was to avoid trouble, pass your state exams, and maybe win a free pizza coupon for reading 10 books over summer break. But Emily had read 10 books in the first month of second grade, and by now, in fourth grade, she had moved past picture books and junior chapter novels to textbooks, PDFs, and scientific journals she had no business understanding, but somehow did. She slipped into her usual seat at the back of class without a word, her presence barely acknowledged by the chattering groups of girls with glitter pens and the boys flicking rubber bands at each other. The teacher, Miss Braddock, barely glanced up when Emily arrived. She knew Emily would sit, wouldn't talk, wouldn't disrupt, just like always. Invisible was easier anyway. Better to be unnoticed than laughed at. The last time she raised her hand to correct a lesson on the solar system, she'd been mocked for a week straight. "We're not in college, nerd," someone had hissed. Since then, Emily kept her brilliance to herself, scribbling thoughts in her notebook and whispering equations under her breath like spells. She knew it wasn't normal. She knew most kids didn't calculate orbital decay during recess or try to estimate how long it would take to terraform a section of Martian soil. But Emily had long ago stopped caring about normal. Normal didn't take you to Mars. She lived for the last 10 minutes of lunch, when she could escape to the library and disappear into the quiet stacks of books, where Mr. Martinez waited with a warm smile and new treasure each week. "I saved this for you," he whispered that day, handing her a thin, slightly frayed copy of a book on propulsion systems. They phased it out years ago, but it still got gold in it. Emily took it like a sacred artifact, cradling it in her arms and nodding in thanks. "I'm working on a new trajectory theory," she said quietly, not wanting to be overheard. "The gravity assist isn't enough. I think I found a better approach." Mr. Martinez leaned closer. "And what are you going to do with it?" She hesitated, then whispered, "I sent it to SpaceX. I mailed the whole thing. My numbers. My theory." His eyes widened just slightly, the crow's feet at the corners of his face folding like origami. "And what if they listen?" "I don't know," she said honestly. "But I couldn't just keep it to myself." He gave a soft chuckle. "That's the thing about people with big ideas. Sooner or later, they burst out." Back in class, she stayed quiet again, letting her thoughts race while the teacher went over spelling lists and grammar rules. She understood those too, but they felt like distractions from what mattered. She wanted to be running simulations, testing fuel efficiency models, correcting delta-V calculations. She had done it all by hand, since her laptop didn't have the processing power for real simulations. Instead, she used trial and error and brainpower, sometimes spending 4 hours calculating one data point with nothing but her calculator and a piece of grid paper. She didn't mind. It made her feel connected, like the early scientists who worked in labs with chalkboards and candles, chasing truth through clouds of ink and determination. Still, Being invisible weighed on her, even if it kept her safe. At recess, she sat under the jungle gym with her notebook open, shielding it with her knees like a secret diary. Today, she was recalculating the slingshot maneuver. Her initial figures had worked, but she was starting to suspect they could be optimized further. A fraction of a degree off in the approach angle could change the entire velocity profile. She had drawn it out with tiny arrows, like a map to another world. "What are you doing?" a voice suddenly asked. Emily froze. She didn't even have to look up to know who it was. Zoe Taylor, with her perfect ponytail and mean streak, stood there with two of her friends, arms crossed. "Is that a diary or something?" Emily shook her head, closed the notebook, and tried to shrink into herself. "It's nothing," she said. "Looks like nerd stuff," Zoe sneered. "Probably writing about aliens or whatever." The other girls laughed. "Or her imaginary boyfriend from NASA." Emily felt her cheeks flush, not with embarrassment but with frustration. They didn't get it. They never would. She stared at the ground and waited for them to lose interest, which they did a moment later when a soccer ball rolled past and caught their attention. As soon as they were gone, Emily reopened the notebook, ran her finger down the page, and sighed. "They won't understand until I prove it," she whispered. "They'll see when it's real." After school, she walked home alone as usual, head down, notebook pressed to her chest like armor. The sidewalks were cracked, the houses worn. One of the fences along her route had a broken board she always ducked under to cut through an empty lot. She moved quickly, avoiding the older kids smoking behind the abandoned garage. She knew better than to draw attention. At home, her mom wasn't back yet. Emily made herself a sandwich, sat at the kitchen table, and flipped through her notes. She was rechecking one of her formulas when the door creaked open. Sarah walked in, looking exhausted, her apron still dusted with flour. "Hey, sweetheart," she said, dropping her purse on the table. "Good day." Emily nodded. "I think I made a breakthrough," she said softly. "With the model." Her mom smiled weakly and kissed the top of her head. "I don't know how you do it, Em. You've got a whole world in that brain of yours." Emily beamed. Her mom didn't always understand the specifics, but she always tried to care. "Can we get stamps this weekend?" she asked suddenly. "In case I want to send something else." "Of course," Sarah said, ruffling her hair. "You keep reaching out, okay? You never know who's listening." That night, while the TV murmured in the background, Emily sat at her desk with her desk lamp flickering, a pile of graph paper beside her, a ruler in one hand and her pencil in the other. She had redrawn the entire Mars approach, adjusting for a minor drift in the orbital path. The numbers were cleaner now, tighter. They fit together like puzzle pieces. She leaned back, staring at the ceiling. What if they really looked at it? What if they called? Would she know what to say? Would they even believe her? She thought of Elon Musk sitting in some high-tech control room, someone handing him her notebook, and him frowning in disbelief before raising an eyebrow and saying, "Get me this girl." It was a fantasy, sure, but not an impossible one. The numbers didn't lie. And whether they replied or not, she had already done something most people never dared to try. She had spoken up. She had taken her secret genius and set it loose on the world. No matter what happened next, she wouldn't be just the weird space girl anymore. She would be the one who tried. The one who dared. And maybe, just maybe, the one who proved Elon Musk wrong. It was a Thursday evening when everything changed again, the kind of evening that crept in quietly, unnoticed, except to those paying attention, like Emily Carter who always paid attention, who noticed the way the sky changed color at exactly 8:17 p.m. when the sun hit the edge of her neighbor's broken satellite dish, the way her old laptop always took 12 seconds to load a YouTube video but 17 if someone else in the neighborhood was online, the way her mother exhaled through her nose when reading overdue notices in the mail but smiled slightly when Emily set the table without being asked, and it was in the quiet of one of those moments, sitting cross-legged on her bedroom floor with graph paper spread around her like fallen leaves, that she noticed the headline at the bottom of her screen. Elon Musk says Mars may not be reachable in this century without radical new math, and just like that, time stopped, because those words were almost exactly the ones she had written in her notebook 3 months earlier, a warning to herself that the models weren't scalable, that the margins were too thin, that the velocity loss on descent would compromise every projection if they didn't reroute the approach, and now Elon Musk, the man who had seemed like a god on her screen for years, was admitting it too, and not just that. He was calling for help, indirectly, through the airwaves, into the world, and maybe, just maybe, to her, and she stared at the blinking cursor on the screen, her heart thumping so loudly she could barely hear anything else, not the TV in the other room, not the ticking clock, not even her own breath, because this was it, wasn't it? This was the moment when everything she had been building in secret might finally matter, might finally be seen, and she couldn't waste it, she wouldn't, so she shoved her papers aside and grabbed a clean sheet, writing furiously, redrawing her revised model, the one she had adjusted last week after discovering a more efficient transfer arc by rerouting the Venus gravity assist just 12 degrees south, something she hadn't even dared to test fully yet, but now she had no choice, now she had to know if it worked, had to be sure before she sent it again, before she put her name on something that might reach SpaceX, or even Elon himself. And she typed faster than she ever had, fingers flying over the sticky keys, inputting coordinates, fuel ratios, burn times, her spreadsheet glowing in the dim light, formulas sprawling across the screen like digital constellations, and when she finally hit run, she held her breath, watching the simulation unfold, waiting for it to crash or stall or explode, but it didn't, it worked, not just worked, it soared, showing a fuel reduction of 39%, a time efficiency increase of 4 months, and for a full minute she just sat there, staring at the results, because it felt too big, too real, too impossible for someone like her, but it wasn't, it was hers, and for the first time in her life she felt something spark deep in her chest, not just hope but fire, the kind that made people change the world, and before she could talk herself out of it, she copied the data into a new file, formatted it cleanly, wrote a letter that was more confident this time, not apologetic but certain, explaining what she had done, how she had found it, why it mattered, and at the bottom she signed it, Emily Carter, age 9, and hit print, her hands shaking but steady, and when her mom came home that night, exhausted and carrying a bag of half-price groceries, Emily stood by the door, paper in hand, and said, "Can we mail this again?" And her mother blinked, took the papers, read the first few lines, and then looked at Emily with a softness in her eyes she hadn't shown in weeks. "You rewrote the path to Mars?" she asked, and Emily nodded, trying not to smile too wide. "I think I made it better," and her mom hugged her tight, tighter than usual, kissed the top of her head, and said, "Let's send it first thing tomorrow," and they did, sealing the envelope with tape and hope, walking it to the post office on the way to school, the woman behind the counter smiling when she saw who it was addressed to, another letter to the stars, huh? And Emily smiled back and said, "Maybe this one will reach them," and then the days began to stretch again, one after another, quiet and uneventful, but Emily was different now, she walked taller, even when no one was looking, because she had done it, really done it, and whether they replied or not, the math was real, and she knew it, and sometimes knowing was enough, but other times it wasn't, especially during spelling tests and cafeteria lunches and slow afternoons where nothing happened. Except the sound of ticking clocks and kids who didn't care about Mars, and she wondered if maybe it had just been a dream, until exactly 12 days later, when the black SUV returned, this time with 2 men inside, both wearing badges, one holding a clipboard and the other holding a tablet, and her mom opened the door and almost dropped her phone when she saw them. "Is this about the letter?" she asked, and the taller man smiled and said, "It's about a lot more than that," and then he crouched to look Emily in the eye and said, "We ran your numbers," and she held her breath again, terrified, electrified, and he laughed softly, the kind of laugh people make when they're impressed and don't want to admit it, and you're not wrong, and then everything blurred, her mom calling into work, them sitting at the kitchen table with laptops and questions and the sound of someone saying, "Elon saw it," and Emily feeling like her heart might burst from her chest, because that was impossible, wasn't it? Except it wasn't, it was happening. And she listened as the men explained how they had forwarded her models through internal review, how one engineer thought it was a hoax until he couldn't disprove the efficiency gains, how someone higher up told them to look into the girl from Ohio, and now here they were, in her kitchen, asking if she had more, if she could explain her methods, if she'd ever considered working with professional software, and she told them everything, about the paper models, the calculators, the spreadsheet hacks, the sleepless nights, and when they asked why she did it. Why? She kept going, she looked at them and said, because someone has to, and one of them, the younger one, just nodded, like he understood something nobody else ever had, and then they left, promising to be in touch, and for a long time after the door closed, Emily and her mom just sat there, the silence so full it felt like music, and then her mom whispered, "You did it, baby," and Emily said, "Not yet," because she knew this wasn't the end, it was only the spark, the ignition, the moment the engines roared to life, and from here on out, everything was about to change. Emily never expected to become a headline, but within days, the news about the 9-year-old math prodigy who challenged Elon Musk spread like wildfire. Her small town in Ohio, usually quiet and unnoticed, was suddenly buzzing with reporters, camera crews, and curious neighbors. When she woke up one morning, the kitchen was flooded with the glow of her mom's phone screen, flashing articles, social media posts, and tweets tagging her name. "You're famous," her mom said, ruffling Emily's hair with a smile that was equal parts proud and overwhelmed. Emily blinked, still half asleep. "I don't feel famous," she said quietly, clutching her favorite notebook like a shield. The truth was, the attention made her nervous. School felt different, too. When Emily walked into Lincoln Elementary, the usual whispers followed her footsteps. Some kids stared openly, others giggled, and a few simply wanted to know if it was true, if she really had sent Elon Musk a letter that made him rethink his Mars plans. Zoe Taylor, the school bully, was quieter now, but her sneers had been replaced by sideways glances. Emily wasn't invisible anymore. Not that she wanted to be loud or boastful, but she noticed the shift. Even Miss Braddock seemed to look at her differently, her eyes filled with a new respect. One afternoon, during recess, Emily was surrounded by a small group of kids asking questions about Mars, rockets, and math. It was the first time she felt like someone was truly listening. She explained how gravity assists worked, how spacecraft used planets to slingshot into higher orbits, and how a tiny miscalculation could mean wasting millions of dollars in fuel. The kids' eyes widened, some nodded, and one boy named Jake even asked if she could help with his science project. For once, Emily felt connected. But the media frenzy wasn't just confined to school. Local news stations wanted interviews, and Emily's mom had to juggle calls from reporters while still working 2 jobs to keep things afloat. One evening, a producer called and asked if Emily would appear on a national science show. The idea of cameras, bright lights, and thousands of viewers made Emily freeze, but after talking with her mom, she agreed. The day of the show was overwhelming. Emily sat backstage, clutching her notebook, while a makeup artist brushed her hair and touched up her face, making her feel like a character in a movie. The host, a friendly woman with a kind smile, greeted her and asked simple questions about her love for space and math. When it was time to explain her theory, Emily spoke clearly and confidently, showing the models she had drawn, the calculations she had performed. The audience watched in awe as she described the new trajectory that could save fuel and time on a Mars mission. Cameras zoomed in on her hands, tracing the lines on the paper, and on her face, full of determination and hope. After the show aired, social media exploded. People from around the world sent messages of encouragement, questions, and praise. Scientists and engineers tweeted their astonishment, calling Emily a once-in-a-generation mind. Elon Musk himself posted a short video, saying, "This young girl's insight is incredible. We'll be reviewing her work personally." Emily felt a mix of pride and pressure. She was just a kid, but suddenly the weight of expectations rested on her small shoulders. At school, the pressure was harder. Teachers asked her to help with lessons, classmates expected her to always have the right answer, and Zoe Taylor's teasing turned into cold stares and whispered rumors. Emily's mom noticed the strain and one night sat her down, saying, "Sweetheart, you don't have to carry this alone. It's okay to take a break, to be just a kid." But Emily shook her head. "If I stop now, what if I lose this chance? What if this is the moment that changes everything?" The answer was a quiet one, a fire that burned inside her even when exhaustion threatened to take over. Meanwhile, SpaceX reached out officially. Emily was invited to their headquarters in California for a special meeting. Her mom was nervous but proud, and together they prepared for the trip. When they arrived, Emily's eyes widened at the sleek offices, the giant rockets, and the engineers bustling with energy. The team greeted her warmly, impressed by her courage and intellect. In a conference room filled with screens showing simulations and data, Emily presented her work again. She explained how her trajectory reduced fuel consumption and shortened the mission time, highlighting the critical angles and timing for the gravity assists. The engineers asked detailed questions, some challenging her assumptions, others praising her creativity. Elon Musk appeared via video call, smiling broadly. "Emily, you're an inspiration. Keep pushing the boundaries," he said. After the meeting, Emily was given a tour of the facility, standing beneath towering rockets that seemed to scrape the sky. She saw prototypes of spacecraft, labs where astronauts trained, and control rooms buzzing with activity. It was a dream come true, but also a reminder of how much work lay ahead. Back home, the world seemed both bigger and smaller. Emily was no longer just a girl with a notebook, she was a symbol of possibility. Still, she missed the quiet moments, reading in the library, running through the park, laughing with her friends. She realized that being brilliant didn't mean she had to be alone. She could share her dreams, ask for help, and still be herself. One afternoon, as the sun set in shades of orange and pink, Emily sat with her mom on the porch, looking up at the stars. "Do you think I can really make it to Mars someday?" she asked softly. Her mom smiled, squeezing her hand. "You already are, in ways you don't even realize. And whatever happens, we'll be with you every step of the way." That night, Emily wrote in her notebook not just formulas and plans, but a promise, to keep dreaming, to keep learning, and to remember that even the smallest voices can change the course of history. The excitement that had surrounded Emily since her trip to SpaceX slowly shifted into something more complicated as reality set in. The initial burst of attention faded for most people, but for Emily, it was only the beginning of a much harder journey. The reporters stopped calling every day, the social media mentions slowed, and the spotlight dimmed. Suddenly, the weight of proving herself, of living up to the impossible expectations placed on a 9-year-old genius, pressed down harder than ever. At school, the pressure became a constant shadow. Teachers, who once smiled encouragingly, now expected her to answer every question instantly, and classmates who were once curious began to distance themselves. Zoe Taylor, who had been the bully before the news broke, now spread rumors about Emily, calling her a show-off and teacher's pet. One afternoon, after a particularly rough day, Emily sat alone on the playground swing, her small hands gripping the chains tightly as the wind tangled her hair and a few tears slipped down her cheeks. She felt the sting of loneliness sharper than ever before. Why was it so hard to just be a kid? At home, her mother noticed the changes too. Emily had become quieter, retreating into her notebooks and calculations instead of playing outside or chatting about her day. Her mom tried to be supportive but felt powerless. One evening, she sat next to Emily on the couch, gently taking her hand. "Sweetheart, it's okay to feel overwhelmed. You don't have to carry this all by yourself." Emily looked up, eyes shining with a mix of frustration and determination. "But Mom, if I stop, then what's the point? What if I'm wrong? What if I'm just a kid pretending to be smart?" Her mother squeezed her hand and whispered, "You're more than smart, you're brave. And it's okay to ask for help." That night, Emily lay awake, her mind racing with doubts and dreams tangled together. She realized that brilliance wasn't just about knowing the answers, it was about finding the strength to keep asking questions even when it was hard. Determined not to let fear stop her, Emily decided to take a different approach. She reached out to her new contacts at SpaceX, sending detailed emails with questions about the engineering challenges and requesting advice on her calculations. To her surprise, she received thoughtful responses from engineers who offered encouragement and even suggested resources to study. One of them, a woman named Dr. Garcia, became a mentor, guiding Emily through complex concepts and recommending books and simulations. This connection reignited Emily's passion. She began spending hours after school experimenting with computer models, tweaking her formulas, and learning new programming languages. Her bedroom transformed into a mini-lab, filled with rocket posters, whiteboards covered in equations, and stacks of science magazines. At school, she found unexpected allies. Jake, the boy who had once asked for help with his science project, now sat beside her during lunch, eager to learn. They formed a small group of curious kids who met after school to talk about space exploration and science, sharing ideas and supporting each other. Even Zoe Taylor's teasing lost its edge as Emily's confidence grew. One day, Zoe surprised everyone by asking if she could join the group, admitting she wanted to understand what made Emily so special. Emily hesitated but then welcomed her with a smile, realizing that kindness could be more powerful than resentment. Meanwhile, SpaceX invited Emily to participate in a youth science competition, challenging her to develop a project that demonstrated a new approach to space travel. It was an opportunity to prove her ideas on a larger stage, but also a daunting challenge. The competition required months of work, teamwork, and public presentations. Emily felt the pressure mounting again but remembered her mother's words and the support from Dr. Garcia and her friends. She threw herself into the project, developing a simulation that combined her fuel-saving trajectory with advanced materials that could withstand the harsh conditions of space. She learned about heat shields, propulsion systems, and orbital mechanics, absorbing everything like a sponge. The day of the competition arrived with a mix of nerves and excitement. Emily stood on the stage before a crowd of engineers, scientists, and fellow students, ready to present her work. As she spoke, her voice steady and clear, she saw nods of approval, heard applause, and felt a deep sense of pride. She wasn't just a girl who proved Elon Musk wrong, she was a young scientist shaping the future. After the event, Elon Musk appeared in person to congratulate her. "Emily," he said, his tone sincere, "you've reminded me that innovation can come from anywhere, and that sometimes, the youngest voices have the clearest vision." That night, as Emily lay in bed, she understood that the journey wasn't about fame or proving anyone wrong, it was about believing in herself and never giving up, no matter how hard it got. Just when Emily thought she was gaining momentum, life threw a curveball she hadn't anticipated. It started with a call from her school principal, a polite but serious voice explaining that some parents were concerned about the media attention and the added pressure on a 9-year-old child. "We want what's best for Emily," the principal said, "but also want to ensure she has a normal childhood." Emily felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Normal? What did that even mean now? The balance she'd been struggling to find suddenly felt even more fragile. At home, the conversations grew tense. Her mom, exhausted from working multiple jobs, worried aloud about Emily's future. "You're amazing, honey," she said one evening, "but maybe it's time to slow down, to enjoy being a kid." Emily clenched her fists but didn't respond. She felt torn between two worlds, the exciting future unfolding before her and the simple joys she feared losing. Then came the invitation that changed everything again. A scholarship offer from a prestigious science academy for gifted children, a place where she could learn from experts, work on advanced projects, and connect with other young geniuses. The catch? It was halfway across the country, and accepting it meant leaving behind her mom, her friends, and the life she'd known. The decision weighed heavily on Emily. At night, she lay awake imagining the new school, the unfamiliar faces, and the loneliness she might feel. Yet, she also pictured herself surrounded by cutting-edge technology, mentors who could help her grow, and opportunities to make a real difference. After many tears and long talks with her mom, Emily decided to accept the scholarship. The day they packed up to leave was bittersweet. Neighbors and friends gathered to say goodbye, and Emily promised to keep in touch and to never forget where she came from. The new school was everything Emily had hoped for and more. The halls buzzed with curiosity and ambition, classrooms filled with students who spoke her language, mathematics, physics, engineering. Her teachers challenged her daily, pushing her beyond what she thought possible. She worked alongside kids who had already published papers and built their own robots, and though intimidating at first, Emily found comfort in shared passion. Yet, the intensity was overwhelming. She missed the quiet afternoons with her mom, the simple lunchroom chats, the familiarity of home. Social dynamics were different here, some kids were competitive, others distant, and making real friends was harder than she expected. In one class, Emily presented her Mars trajectory project again, this time with more advanced models and simulations. The room was silent at first, then erupted in questions and critiques. Emily welcomed the challenge, defending her ideas and learning from the feedback. Her mentor, Dr. Garcia, now visiting regularly, reminded her to stay humble and open-minded. Outside the classroom, Emily joined the school's robotics club and quickly became a key member. Together, they worked on a Mars rover prototype, integrating her trajectory calculations to plan the rover's travel path. The collaboration reignited Emily's excitement and sense of belonging. But just as she began to find her footing, the unexpected happened, a severe family emergency back home. Emily's mom was hospitalized after a sudden illness, and the news shattered Emily's world. Feeling helpless thousands of miles away, she struggled to focus on schoolwork. The once clear path to the stars blurred with worry and guilt. The school counselors offered support, and her friends rallied around her, but nothing could replace the comfort of being near her mother. Emily made a difficult decision to return home temporarily, balancing her studies with caring for her mom. The community that had watched her rise rallied once more, bringing meals, helping with chores, and sending messages of encouragement. Through the toughest days, Emily realized the true meaning of resilience. Her dreams remained alive, but she also discovered the importance of family, friendship, and asking for help. When her mom finally recovered, Emily returned to the academy with renewed strength and perspective. She knew the road ahead would be challenging, but now she carried not just knowledge and ambition, but heart and determination, the qualities that would carry her through every obstacle. And so, the journey continued, a young girl with the courage to face the stars and the wisdom to cherish the world beneath her feet. Returning to the Science Academy after her mother's recovery felt like stepping into a new world. Emily carried a different kind of strength now, one forged through hardship and love. The campus seemed larger, the halls busier, but Emily no longer felt lost. Instead, she was eager to dive back into her studies and the projects that awaited her. One of the first things Emily noticed was how many other kids here shared her passion for discovery. Unlike before, where she sometimes felt isolated by her talents, here she was surrounded by peers who asked big questions and dreamed bigger dreams. In her advanced physics class, Emily met Mia, a brilliant girl with a quick wit and a contagious laugh. They instantly bonded over their love of space exploration and stayed late after class, debating the merits of different propulsion systems. Mia introduced Emily to the school's space club, a group of students working on everything from rocket design to coding satellites. Emily quickly found herself at the heart of the group, sharing her trajectory calculations and learning new ways to simulate orbital mechanics. The collaboration sparked a creativity Emily hadn't felt in a long time. The school was a whirlwind of activity, robotics competitions, science fairs, guest lectures from real astronauts, and late-night study sessions fueled by pizza and excitement. Emily thrived, but she also learned to balance her passion with the need for rest and fun. One afternoon, the Space Club organized a stargazing event on the school's rooftop. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars appeared, Emily lay on a blanket beside Mia, pointing out constellations and imagining the planets they might someday visit. It was a moment of peace, a reminder that even amid pressure and expectations, there was wonder in the universe waiting to be explored. Outside academics, Emily faced the usual challenges of growing up, making new friends, navigating social groups, and handling moments of self-doubt. Sometimes she wondered if she belonged, if her dreams were too big for a girl so young. But Mia and the Space Club became a support system, a place where Emily could be herself, ask questions without fear, and find encouragement. As the months passed, Emily's work caught the attention of her teachers and mentors. Her trajectory calculations had evolved into a sophisticated model combining fuel efficiency with safety protocols for crewed missions. Dr. Garcia praised her progress, often inviting Emily to share her work with visiting scientists and engineers. One day, a special announcement came that would change everything again. A National Youth Science Summit was being held in Washington, D.C., bringing together the brightest young minds from across the country. Emily was selected to represent her academy and present her project on Mars mission trajectories. The opportunity was thrilling but also daunting. Preparing for the summit meant intense work, public speaking practice, and overcoming the nerves that sometimes gripped her. But Emily was ready. The night before the summit, Emily lay awake imagining the crowd, the stage, and the questions she might face. Her mind raced, but instead of fear, she felt a quiet determination. This was her chance not just to prove herself to others, but to honor the journey she had traveled, from a curious girl in Ohio to a rising star in the world of space science. At the summit, the atmosphere was electric. Young scientists from every state presented projects on robotics, environmental science, astronomy, and more. Emily's presentation drew a large crowd. She spoke with clarity and passion, explaining her trajectory model and how it could save time and resources for future Mars missions. The audience was captivated, and the questions that followed were thoughtful and challenging. Among the attendees was a panel of judges, including top NASA scientists and engineers. After the presentations, Emily was invited to a private roundtable to discuss her ideas further. The conversation was intense but encouraging. Emily realized that even the most brilliant minds had doubts and questions, and that science was about constant learning and collaboration. That evening, the summit organizers announced awards for outstanding projects. Emily's name was called as the winner of the Innovative Space Exploration category. The applause filled the room, and as she accepted the trophy, Emily felt a surge of pride and gratitude. But more than the award, it was the connections she made, the mentors, the friends, the shared dreams, that meant the most. Returning home, Emily reflected on how far she'd come. The journey was far from over, but she knew she was not alone. With each challenge, each discovery, and each new friendship, she was building a future not just for herself, but for everyone who dared to dream beyond the stars. Just as Emily was settling into her role as a rising young scientist, the universe reminded her that even the brightest stars can face darkness. The setback came unexpectedly one cold winter morning during a critical test of her Mars trajectory simulation. The school's lab, usually filled with buzzing computers and excited chatter, was unusually silent as Emily and her teammates prepared their latest run. Weeks of work had gone into refining the program, adjusting calculations to optimize fuel efficiency and flight path safety. The simulation was supposed to be flawless. But as the numbers flickered across the screen, the results didn't add up. The trajectory showed unexpected deviations that would risk the mission's success and crew safety. Emily's heart sank. She and her team double-checked the data, recalculated trajectories, and scoured the code, but the problem persisted. The models that once seemed so perfect now revealed flaws they hadn't anticipated. The lab fell into a heavy silence. For the first time since her journey began, Emily felt doubt creeping in. Had she made a mistake? Was her work really as groundbreaking as everyone said, or was she just a kid lucky enough to catch attention? The disappointment was crushing. That evening, Emily sat alone in her room, staring at the glowing screen of her laptop, the error messages mocking her. Tears welled in her eyes as frustration and fear overwhelmed her. She felt the sting of failure more deeply than she ever had before. But then, a message popped up, a note from Dr. Garcia, her mentor, who had been following the project closely. "Mistakes are not failures, Emily," the message read. "They are the stepping stones to discovery. Remember, every great scientist has faced setbacks. What matters is how you respond." Emily wiped her tears and reread the words. They sparked a flicker of hope. She wasn't alone in this. The next day, Emily gathered her team and shared Dr. Garcia's message. They decided to approach the problem differently, breaking down the simulation into smaller components, testing each one meticulously. The process was painstaking. Days turned into nights filled with trial and error, debates, and brainstorming sessions. Emily learned to ask for help, listen carefully to others' ideas, and stay patient when progress was slow. Slowly, the pieces began to fall into place. The errors traced back to a subtle flaw in the way gravitational forces were being modeled during a critical phase of the flight. Fixing it required rewriting a large part of the code and recalculating the trajectory from scratch. The team worked tirelessly, fueled by determination and a shared belief in their mission. When the new simulation ran successfully, producing a stable and efficient trajectory, the relief and joy were overwhelming. Emily realized that the setback wasn't a dead end, it was a detour that led to deeper understanding and stronger teamwork. The experience changed her perspective. Failure was no longer a terrifying enemy but a necessary part of growth and innovation. She shared her journey openly at school, speaking about resilience and the value of learning from mistakes. The vulnerability made her even more relatable, and classmates who once kept their distance now saw her as someone who faced challenges just like them. Emily's relationship with Zoe Taylor also transformed. Zoe admitted that she had been intimidated by Emily's talents and that her teasing came from insecurity. The two girls began to find common ground, learning to support each other rather than compete. As Emily's confidence grew, so did her ambitions. She began working on a new project, designing a prototype for a lightweight, solar-powered drone that could explore Mars' atmosphere. The setback had taught her to embrace complexity and approach problems with patience and curiosity. Her mentors noticed the growth and praised her maturity. Meanwhile, the news about Emily's resilience spread beyond her school. Media outlets picked up the story of the young scientist who overcame failure with grace, inspiring others to face their own challenges. Emily's message was clear. It's okay to stumble, as long as you keep moving forward. One night, while gazing at the stars from her bedroom window, Emily felt a quiet confidence she hadn't known before. The road to the stars was full of obstacles, but she was ready for the journey. Because sometimes, the most important discoveries come after the hardest falls. Emily's journey continued to unfold in surprising ways, and one of the most remarkable moments came when an unexpected mentor entered her life. It was a chilly spring afternoon when Emily received an email that would change everything. The sender was none other than Dr. Michelle Anderson, a renowned aerospace engineer who had worked on several high-profile NASA missions. Dr. Anderson had heard about Emily's Mars trajectory project through a colleague and wanted to offer her guidance. Emily felt a rush of excitement mixed with nervousness. Could this be real? The idea that someone so accomplished wanted to mentor her was almost too incredible to believe. Over the next few weeks, Emily and Dr. Anderson began an email correspondence that quickly turned into weekly video calls. Dr. Anderson was warm, encouraging, and challenging in all the right ways. She asked Emily tough questions, pushing her to think critically and deeply about her work. But she also shared stories of her own struggles and triumphs, reminding Emily that even the brightest minds had faced setbacks. Their conversations covered everything from orbital mechanics to the importance of perseverance. One day, Dr. Anderson invited Emily to visit her lab at a nearby university. Emily's mom drove her the long way there, and when they arrived, Emily was greeted by a world of cutting-edge technology, 3D printers, wind tunnels, and robotic arms. Dr. Anderson introduced Emily to her team, who welcomed the young scientist with smiles and curiosity. Emily was allowed to tour the facilities, ask questions, and even try her hand at designing a component for a satellite. The experience was electrifying. She realized how much there was to learn and how many possibilities awaited her. Over the next few months, Emily worked closely with Dr. Anderson, refining her trajectory model and incorporating new elements like real-time data analysis and advanced materials science. They collaborated on a paper that Emily would eventually present at a youth science conference, a milestone that felt both exciting and nerve-wracking. Through this mentorship, Emily not only grew as a scientist but also as a person. Dr. Anderson taught her the importance of balance, how to pursue her dreams while staying grounded and connected to the people who loved her. Emily learned to celebrate small victories and accept setbacks as part of the process. At school, her peers noticed the change too. Emily was more confident, more patient, and more willing to share what she knew. She began tutoring other students and encouraging them to explore their interests. Her story became a beacon of hope, showing that greatness wasn't just about talent, it was about hard work, curiosity, and heart. One day, during a particularly challenging project, Emily felt overwhelmed and doubted her abilities. She called Dr. Anderson, who listened patiently before saying, "Remember, Emily, the path to discovery is rarely straight. It's full of twists and turns. What matters is your willingness to keep moving forward, no matter what." Those words became a mantra for Emily. She faced each challenge with renewed determination, knowing that her mentor believed in her, even when she struggled to believe in herself. As the year progressed, Emily's work attracted more attention. Invitations came to speak at local schools, science museums, and community events. She became a role model for other kids, especially girls, who saw in her a reflection of their own dreams and potential. But Emily never lost sight of what mattered most: her family, her friends, and the simple joy of discovery. One evening, as she and Mia stargazed on the rooftop, Emily realized that her journey was about more than rockets and trajectories. It was about connection, between people, ideas, and the universe itself. With Dr. Anderson's guidance and the support of those around her, Emily was ready to face whatever came next. Because sometimes, the greatest lessons come from the mentors who see not just what you are, but what you can become. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Emily's growing achievements inevitably drew more public attention, thrusting her into a spotlight that was both thrilling and overwhelming. Invitations to appear on podcasts, local news segments, and even national science shows began to pile up. At first, Emily was excited by the idea of sharing her story, imagining that inspiring others was exactly what she wanted. But soon, the constant attention started to wear on her. Each interview felt like a test, where every word mattered and every mistake could be magnified. One afternoon, after a particularly exhausting interview with a popular morning show, Emily sat in her room, exhausted and doubting herself. She wondered if the pressure was worth it or if she was simply a kid caught in an adult world too soon. Yet, every time those doubts crept in, Emily reminded herself of why she started this journey: her love for space, her desire to prove that even a 9-year-old could think big, and the hope to inspire others like her. At school, the attention was a double-edged sword. Some students admired her, but others whispered, jealous or unsure of how to relate to someone so advanced. There were moments when Emily felt isolated, as if the gap between her world and theirs grew wider. Her friendship with Mia became even more important, a refuge where she could just be a kid, laugh, and forget about expectations. During this period, Emily was invited to speak at a national STEM conference aimed at encouraging young girls to pursue science and technology. The keynote speech was her biggest stage yet, held in front of hundreds of educators, scientists, and students. Preparing for the event became Emily's main focus. She practiced for weeks, honing her message to be both inspiring and accessible. On the day of the conference, nerves buzzed in her stomach as she stepped onto the stage. But as she looked out at the sea of faces, Emily found her voice. She spoke about curiosity, resilience, and the importance of embracing failure as part of growth. She told the audience about the challenges she'd faced, the setbacks, the loneliness, the moments of doubt, and how each had taught her valuable lessons. The crowd responded with applause and cheers, many moved to tears by the young girl's honesty and passion. After the speech, Emily was approached by a panel of scientists who offered opportunities to collaborate on upcoming space missions. The validation was overwhelming. Yet, the most meaningful moment came from a young girl in the audience who shyly approached Emily and said, "You make me believe I can do this too." That simple sentence made everything worthwhile. Despite the bright lights and applause, Emily also learned the importance of privacy and self-care. She began setting boundaries around her public appearances and leaned more on her family and close friends for support. Her mother, seeing the toll the spotlight was taking, reminded Emily that being a child was a gift she shouldn't rush past. With that wisdom in mind, Emily balanced her public life with quiet moments, reading science fiction novels, playing board games with her mom, and stargazing with Mia. At the same time, she continued her work, pushing the boundaries of her Mars trajectory project, now incorporating feedback from real engineers and scientists. Her presentations became more sophisticated, blending technical detail with stories that made the science come alive. The media dubbed her a space prodigy, a title Emily accepted with humility, always quick to emphasize the role of her mentors and team. But not all attention was positive. A few critics questioned whether so much focus on one child was appropriate, debating if the pressure could harm her development. Some skeptical voices wondered if her achievements were exaggerated or the result of adults pushing her too hard. Emily heard these whispers and felt their sting but refused to let them define her. Instead, she used them as fuel to prove that her passion and accomplishments were real and deserved respect. Through it all, Emily's character deepened. She grew not just as a scientist but as a leader who understood the weight of responsibility that came with influence. She advocated for kindness and inclusion, urging her peers to support one another rather than compete. And she dreamed bigger than ever, imagining not just reaching Mars but making space accessible to everyone. The chapter of public recognition was both a challenge and a triumph, a test of Emily's resilience and maturity. It reminded her that true success wasn't about fame but about impact. As Emily looked up at the stars from her bedroom window one quiet night, she whispered to herself, "This is only the beginning." And she meant it. The universe was waiting. Just when Emily thought she had begun to master her new life in the spotlight, an unexpected challenge appeared, one that would test her spirit and resolve in ways she never anticipated. It all started with a letter, hand-delivered to her school by a courier. The letter was from a foundation dedicated to supporting young innovators, inviting Emily to participate in a national competition designed to solve a real-world problem with science and technology. The prize was a scholarship, funding for further research, and a chance to collaborate with leading experts. The catch? The problem was complex, designing a sustainable energy solution for remote communities. Emily was thrilled but also daunted. This wasn't about space exploration or Mars trajectories. It was a new kind of puzzle, one that involved social impact and environmental science, areas she had only touched on. The competition deadline was tight, and Emily knew she would have to learn quickly. She decided to form a team, recruiting Mia for her programming skills and another classmate, Jamal, who was passionate about environmental issues and had experience in engineering. Together, they brainstormed ideas, combining their strengths. Emily took the lead on researching energy sources and technology, while Jamal focused on materials and feasibility, and Mia developed simulations and data models. The process was intense. Each member brought their own perspective, which sometimes led to disagreements and frustrations. Emily had to learn how to navigate these conflicts, finding ways to encourage collaboration and keep the team focused. At times, she struggled to balance her schoolwork, public appearances, and the demanding project. Sleepless nights became common, but the team's determination never wavered. They ultimately settled on a solar-powered microgrid system designed to provide clean, reliable energy to isolated villages. The design incorporated innovative battery storage and smart distribution technology to maximize efficiency and adaptability. Emily's trajectory modeling experience helped them simulate how the system could withstand different environmental conditions. As the submission deadline approached, the pressure mounted. Emily faced moments of self-doubt. Was their solution practical? Would the judges see the value they believed in? The night before the deadline, the team gathered at Emily's house to put the final touches on their presentation. Emotions ran high, but they supported one another, reminding each other why they were doing this. When the submission was sent, Emily felt a mix of relief and anticipation. Weeks later, the announcement came: Emily's team was selected as finalists. The news spread quickly, bringing another wave of excitement and scrutiny. The final stage of the competition involved presenting their project in front of a panel of experts and investors. The pressure was immense, but Emily was ready. In preparation, Dr. Anderson helped Emily and her team refine their presentation skills, emphasizing storytelling and clear communication. On the day of the final, Emily stood backstage with Mia and Jamal, heart pounding but steady. When it was their turn, they delivered their pitch with confidence and passion, answering tough questions and demonstrating deep knowledge. The judges were impressed by the team's technical acumen and the project's potential real-world impact. Although Emily's team didn't win the top prize, they received a special award for innovation and community focus, along with an invitation to partner with a non-profit to pilot their microgrid design. The experience was transformative. Emily learned that success wasn't only about winning but about making a difference and growing through challenges. She embraced the idea that sometimes, the biggest breakthroughs come from unexpected directions. This challenge also deepened her friendships and taught her the value of teamwork and humility. As Emily returned home that evening, she felt a new sense of purpose. The world was full of problems waiting to be solved, and she was ready to tackle them, one step at a time. The journey ahead was uncertain, but with her passion and perseverance, Emily knew she could navigate whatever came next. After the competition, Emily found herself at a crossroads. The invitation to partner with a nonprofit to pilot the microgrid design opened new doors, but it also brought fresh challenges. This wasn't just a theoretical project anymore, it was about real people, real communities, and real stakes. The nonprofit was focused on helping remote villages in the southwestern United States, areas where electricity was scarce and the impact of climate change was harsh. Emily felt a deep responsibility, knowing that her work could directly improve lives. She traveled with her family to the first pilot site, a small Navajo Nation community tucked between red rock mesas and wide-open skies. The landscape was breathtaking, but the harsh environment made life difficult. Families relied on propane and diesel generators, which were costly and harmful to the environment. Meeting the locals, Emily was struck by their resilience and warmth. Children played under the sun, elders shared stories of their ancestors, and everyone welcomed her with open arms. The community's leaders expressed hope but also skepticism. They had seen many projects come and go without lasting impact. Emily knew she had to earn their trust. She spent days talking with families, learning about their needs, routines, and challenges. She realized that technology alone wouldn't be enough. The solution had to fit their way of life and respect their traditions. Back at the pilot site, Emily and her team worked tirelessly to install the solar microgrid components. There were setbacks, equipment failures, unexpected weather, and logistical hurdles. But each obstacle was met with creativity and collaboration. The community members soon got involved, learning how the system worked and taking part in maintenance. This hands-on approach built a sense of ownership and pride. Slowly, the lights began to turn on in homes that had been dark for decades. Refrigerators kept food fresh, children could study after sunset, and clinics had reliable power for essential equipment. The change was profound. Emily saw firsthand the impact of her work, not just in technical terms but in smiles, laughter, and renewed hope. The experience transformed her understanding of science and engineering. It wasn't just about rockets or theories but about connection, empathy, and service. She realized that every calculation, every simulation, was part of a bigger picture, improving human lives and protecting the planet. The pilot project gained attention from local news and government officials, bringing support and resources. Emily was invited to speak at community gatherings, where she shared her vision and listened to feedback. The relationships she built were as important as the technology itself. Through this journey, Emily's confidence blossomed. She saw herself not just as a young prodigy but as a bridge between worlds, between innovation and tradition, science and culture, dreams and reality. She also recognized the importance of humility and patience, knowing that meaningful change takes time and effort. At night, under the vast desert sky, Emily would sit with her new friends and gaze at the stars. The universe felt closer here, not distant and unreachable but a part of the shared human experience. She thought about Elon Musk's skepticism, about the challenges she'd faced, and about the endless possibilities ahead. This new frontier was hers to explore. And with every step, Emily was proving that age was no barrier to making a difference. Just as Emily's project began gaining real traction in the Navajo Nation community, an unexpected media storm erupted, threatening to overshadow everything she had worked so hard to build. It started with a viral news article that painted Emily as a child genius saving the world, a headline that, while flattering, quickly spun out of control. Social media exploded with both praise and criticism. Supporters lauded her as a symbol of hope and inspiration, but detractors questioned whether so much attention on a 9-year-old was appropriate or even fair. Some argued that she was being pushed too hard by adults, while others doubted the feasibility of her projects. Overnight, Emily found herself at the center of debates on national talk shows and internet forums. The constant scrutiny was exhausting. Questions about her age, the role of her parents and mentors, and even the authenticity of her achievements flooded in. The pressure mounted, and Emily began to feel the weight of expectations pressing down on her young shoulders. Her schoolwork suffered, and moments of self-doubt crept back into her mind. Could she really handle all this? Meanwhile, the Navajo community, proud of the progress they had made together, was suddenly hesitant about the media frenzy. Some worried that the spotlight might exploit their struggles or misrepresent their culture. Emily's relationship with the community deepened as she listened to their concerns and promised to respect their wishes. Her mother, sensing the toll, stepped in to protect Emily's well-being, limiting media appearances and encouraging downtime. Emily also turned to Dr. Anderson for advice. "Remember, Emily," Dr. Anderson said during one video call, "the story is bigger than the headlines. It's about people, about real change. Stay true to that." Inspired by this wisdom, Emily decided to take control of her narrative. She wrote a heartfelt blog post, sharing her honest experiences, the joys, the fears, and the lessons learned. She spoke about the importance of teamwork, the value of patience, and the need to listen to those who are affected by change. The post resonated widely, calming some critics and strengthening her supporters. Emily's openness humanized her story, reminding everyone that behind the headlines was a kid navigating a complicated path. She also organized a small event back in the Navajo community, inviting journalists to meet the people whose lives were being touched by the microgrid project. The visit helped shift the focus from Emily alone to the collaborative effort making a difference. The media coverage that followed was more balanced, highlighting the community's resilience and the potential of grassroots innovation. Slowly, the storm began to subside. Emily learned valuable lessons about fame, privacy, and the responsibility that comes with visibility. She discovered the importance of setting boundaries and staying connected to her roots and values. Most importantly, she realized that her work was not about being in the spotlight but about making meaningful impact, whether anyone was watching or not. As the dust settled, Emily felt stronger and more determined than ever. The media storm had been a test, but it had not broken her. Instead, It had shaped her into a more thoughtful and grounded young scientist, ready to continue her journey with integrity and courage. Looking up at the night sky, Emily whispered, "No matter the noise, the stars remain." And that steady light would guide her forward. After weathering the media storm, Emily emerged with renewed focus and an even stronger sense of purpose. The challenges she had faced had sharpened her resolve to break barriers, not just for herself, but for other young girls and underrepresented voices in STEM. One morning, Emily received an invitation that felt like the culmination of everything she had worked toward, to speak at a major national STEM summit attended by scientists, engineers, educators, and policymakers. The theme was Innovation for All, emphasizing diversity, equity, and inclusion in science and technology. Preparing for this event was unlike any other. Emily knew this was her chance to advocate not only for her work but for a larger movement. She crafted her speech carefully, blending her personal journey with a call to action for greater support and opportunities for girls and minorities in STEM fields. When the day of the summit arrived, Emily stood before a packed auditorium filled with influential figures. Her nerves were present but tempered by confidence and the knowledge that her message mattered. She spoke eloquently about the obstacles she had faced, ageism, skepticism, cultural expectations, and how she had overcome them with determination, mentorship, and community support. Emily emphasized the power of curiosity and the need to create environments where all young people could thrive regardless of background. Her words sparked a standing ovation, and many approached her afterward to express how inspired they were. Among them was a congresswoman who pledged to champion STEM education funding in underserved communities. Emily's speech made headlines once again, but this time the focus was on empowerment and change rather than spectacle. Motivated by the summit, Emily helped launch a nonprofit initiative called Stars for All, dedicated to providing resources, mentorship, and scholarships for girls interested in science and technology. The initiative partnered with schools, community centers, and tech companies, creating pipelines for talent and support. Emily's role wasn't just symbolic. She actively participated in program development, speaking engagements, and mentoring younger students. Meanwhile, her own projects continued to grow. She expanded the solar microgrid work to other remote communities and began exploring new areas of interest like sustainable agriculture and robotics. Her curiosity was insatiable, and she relished the chance to learn and innovate. Behind the scenes, Emily also faced personal growth. She learned to balance ambition with self-care, understanding that burnout was real and that rest was essential. Her friendships deepened, especially with Mia and Jamal, who remained constant sources of support and collaboration. Together, they dreamed big and tackled challenges as a team. One particularly memorable moment came when Emily was invited to a private meeting with Elon Musk himself. The encounter was surreal. Elon praised her ingenuity and resilience but also challenged her to keep pushing boundaries and to think beyond what seemed possible. Emily appreciated his candor and took his words to heart, seeing him not as an adversary but as a catalyst for her own ambition. As the chapter of breaking barriers continued, Emily grew into a young leader who inspired action and fostered inclusion. She proved that no obstacle, be it age, gender, or background, could hold back someone with passion, support, and a vision for a better future. Her story was no longer just about proving Elon Musk wrong, it was about opening doors for countless others and lighting the way for a new generation of innovators. Just when things seemed to be falling into place for Emily, an unexpected setback hit that threatened to unravel months of progress and test her resilience like never before. The nonprofit project expanding solar microgrids to remote communities encountered a major obstacle. Funding that had been promised by a key partner was suddenly withdrawn due to internal budget cuts and shifting priorities. This meant equipment deliveries were delayed, planned installations were postponed indefinitely, and the morale of the community members involved began to falter. Emily felt the weight of responsibility crushed down on her young shoulders. She was devastated not just by the practical implications but by the fear that she might be letting down the people who had come to trust her and her team. This setback sparked a wave of doubt and frustration. Emily questioned whether she had taken on more than she could handle. Could she continue to lead when so much depended on resources outside her control? Schoolwork and media obligations also piled up, compounding the stress. But amid the darkness, Emily's support system rallied around her. Her parents reminded her of the power of perseverance and the importance of staying focused on the long-term vision. Mia and Jamal offered encouragement and practical help, brainstorming alternative strategies to keep momentum going. Dr. Anderson helped Emily reframe the situation as an opportunity to innovate and grow stronger. Together, they organized a virtual fundraiser and awareness campaign to attract new donors and partners. Emily poured her heart into creating compelling messages and sharing the stories of the communities affected. She connected directly with people who had benefited from the pilot project, showing the tangible impact of the work. Slowly, the campaign gained traction. Donations began to trickle in, then build steadily. Local businesses, tech startups, and community leaders stepped forward, inspired by Emily's determination and the cause she championed. The setback became a catalyst for a broader movement, engaging new supporters and shining a light on the ongoing energy challenges faced by remote communities. Throughout this difficult time, Emily learned profound lessons about leadership. She discovered that setbacks were inevitable but not insurmountable. That vulnerability and asking for help were signs of strength, not weakness. That a vision rooted in purpose could sustain even the darkest moments. When new funding finally arrived, the project resumed with renewed energy and deeper community involvement. Emily saw how the struggle had strengthened relationships and expanded the impact beyond what she had originally imagined. The experience left her more mature and grounded, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead with courage and grace. As she reflected on this chapter of her journey, Emily realized that setbacks were not the end but part of the evolving path toward success. Sometimes, she thought, you have to fall to rise even higher. Just as Emily was regaining her footing after the setback, an unexpected opportunity arrived that would once again push her beyond her comfort zone and open doors she hadn't dared imagine. One afternoon, Emily received a phone call from a representative of NASA, inviting her to participate in a special youth program designed to inspire the next generation of space explorers. The program would include virtual workshops with astronauts, hands-on experiments, and a chance to contribute ideas to upcoming missions. For Emily, who had dreamed of space since she was little, this was beyond exciting. But it also meant juggling even more responsibilities. School, her ongoing community projects, media attention, and now this new commitment. Still, she couldn't resist the chance to learn from real astronauts and be part of something so extraordinary. The NASA program began with an orientation session where Emily met other young participants from across the country. They all shared a passion for space, science, and discovery. Emily immediately connected with several peers who became fast friends and collaborators. Over the weeks, Emily participated in workshops about robotics, planetary geology, and life sciences in space. She eagerly absorbed every lesson, asked thoughtful questions, and impressed the mentors with her curiosity and insight. One highlight was a simulated mission exercise where participants worked together to solve problems on a fictional Mars base. Emily's experience designing trajectories and sustainable energy systems made her a natural leader in the group, guiding strategy and encouraging teamwork. Beyond the technical knowledge, the program emphasized the human side of exploration, the courage, resilience, and collaboration required to push boundaries. Emily found inspiration in the stories of astronauts who had faced danger and uncertainty yet remained committed to their missions. This reinforced her own belief that setbacks and challenges were part of the journey toward greatness. Toward the program's conclusion, NASA asked Emily and her peers to submit innovative ideas for future space missions. Emily proposed a concept combining her microgrid expertise with life support systems, envisioning sustainable habitats powered by renewable energy on Mars and the Moon. Her proposal was selected to be included in a presentation to NASA engineers and scientists, an incredible honor for someone so young. The experience deepened Emily's passion for space exploration and innovation. It also gave her a glimpse into the future she hoped to help build, where technology and humanity worked hand in hand to reach new frontiers. Balancing the NASA program with her other commitments was challenging, but Emily grew stronger and more confident with each passing day. She realized that growth often comes from stretching beyond what feels comfortable and embracing new challenges. The surprise opportunity from NASA was not just a chance to learn but a confirmation that her dreams were within reach. Looking out at the stars, Emily felt more connected than ever to the universe and to the people who dared to explore it. She knew the road ahead would have ups and downs, but she was ready to face them all with curiosity, courage, and heart. Just when Emily thought she had charted the course of her journey, fate introduced an unexpected mentor who would change her perspective and propel her further toward her dreams. It happened during a regional STEM conference where Emily was invited to speak about her work on sustainable energy and community empowerment. The room was filled with educators, engineers, and innovators, all eager to hear from the young prodigy whose story had captured national attention. After her presentation, a distinguished woman approached Emily. Her name was Dr. Karen Mitchell, a renowned aerospace engineer with decades of experience at NASA and private space companies. Dr. Mitchell was impressed by Emily's technical knowledge but even more by her humility and vision. She saw in Emily a rare spark, not just intelligence but passion and resilience. Over the following weeks, Dr. Mitchell reached out regularly, offering guidance and encouragement. She shared stories of her own struggles breaking into male-dominated fields and how mentorship had been crucial to her success. Emily absorbed every word, feeling both inspired and supported. Their relationship quickly grew into a mentorship filled with challenging questions, brainstorming sessions, and honest conversations about the realities of pursuing big dreams. Dr. Mitchell encouraged Emily to think beyond immediate problems and envision the long-term impact of her work on humanity and the planet. Together, they explored advanced topics in space technology, sustainable engineering, and leadership. Dr. Mitchell also connected Emily to a network of professionals and resources, expanding her opportunities for growth and collaboration. One day, Dr. Mitchell invited Emily to visit a cutting-edge aerospace lab where engineers were developing new propulsion systems and habitat modules for deep space missions. Walking through the facility, Emily was awestruck by the scale and complexity of the work. She realized that the journey from idea to reality required persistence, teamwork, and the courage to face failure head-on. This experience deepened Emily's appreciation for the scientific process and reinforced her commitment to continuous learning. With Dr. Mitchell's mentorship, Emily began to refine her goals, balancing ambition with practical steps. She started drafting proposals for research grants, aiming to fund her own projects while contributing to larger missions. Their conversations often circled back to the importance of community, how technology should serve people and how leadership meant lifting others up along the way. Emily felt a profound shift. She was no longer just a young girl proving skeptics wrong, she was becoming a thoughtful leader ready to make a lasting difference. Dr. Mitchell's guidance gave her confidence to navigate challenges and embrace the unknown. As they looked toward the future together, Emily understood that mentorship was a gift that went beyond knowledge, it was about belief, encouragement, and opening doors. The unexpected mentor had arrived at just the right moment, fueling a new chapter of growth and possibility. Emily's journey was far from over, but with Dr. Mitchell by her side, she felt prepared to reach for the stars and beyond. As Emily's 10th birthday approached, she found herself facing what felt like the ultimate challenge, a national innovation competition designed to spotlight young inventors solving real-world problems. The contest was fierce, drawing the brightest minds from across the country, each presenting projects that combined creativity, science, and impact. Emily entered with her latest concept, a modular, solar-powered habitat system designed for off-grid communities on Earth and potentially for space missions. The design incorporated lessons from her microgrid work and ideas inspired by her NASA experience and mentorship with Dr. Mitchell. The weeks leading up to the competition were a whirlwind. Emily balanced school, media interviews, community outreach, and finalizing her project prototype. Her parents, friends Mia and Jamal, and Dr. Mitchell stood firmly by her side, offering support, advice, and encouragement. The night before the competition, Emily felt a mix of excitement and nerves. She worried about whether her work was good enough, whether the judges would understand her vision, and whether she could handle the pressure. But she also reminded herself of everything she had overcome, the setbacks, the skepticism, the media storms, and how each had made her stronger. On the day of the competition, the venue buzzed with energy and anticipation. Emily presented her project with passion and clarity, demonstrating how the habitat system could provide sustainable, adaptable housing solutions that addressed both environmental and social challenges. Her presentation included vivid stories from the Navajo community, her NASA insights, and the mentorship that had shaped her journey. The judges asked tough questions, probing the feasibility, scalability, and innovation of her design. Emily answered with confidence and honesty, acknowledging areas for growth while emphasizing the real-world impact. Hours later, during the award ceremony, Emily stood among finalists and winners. When her name was announced as the grand prize winner, the crowd erupted in applause. Tears welled in her eyes as she realized the significance of the moment, not just a trophy but validation of years of hard work and belief. The victory opened new doors, scholarships, internships, and invitations to speak at conferences worldwide. But more importantly, it reinforced her mission to use science and innovation to uplift communities and inspire others. Reflecting on the journey, Emily recognized that the final test wasn't just the competition but every challenge along the way that had prepared her for this moment. She had transformed from a curious, determined girl into a confident young leader ready to shape the future. With a heart full of hope and a mind buzzing with ideas, Emily looked ahead, knowing the road was still long but filled with endless possibilities. As the sun set over the quiet town where Emily had first dreamed of changing the world, she sat on her porch surrounded by her family and friends, reflecting on the incredible journey she had traveled. From a curious 9-year-old with an idea to a national inspiration breaking barriers and lighting the way for others, Emily's story was one of hope, resilience, and transformation. The past year had tested her in ways she never imagined, from harsh criticism and intense media scrutiny to unexpected setbacks and exhilarating triumphs. Yet through it all, she learned that true strength comes from within and grows through connection, purpose, and courage. Emily's mother gently squeezed her hand, proud beyond words, while Mia and Jamal exchanged smiles that spoke of shared dreams and unbreakable bonds. Even Dr. Mitchell, her mentor and guide, beamed with quiet satisfaction knowing Emily's impact would ripple far beyond their community. Emily thought about the Navajo Nation, the heart of her mission, where clean energy was no longer just a hope but a reality transforming lives and futures. She remembered the faces of those she had met, the elders, the children, the families, whose resilience inspired her every day. This was the true reward, far greater than any award or headline. As she looked up at the stars beginning to twinkle in the deepening sky, Emily felt a profound connection to the universe and her place within it. Her dreams had grown bigger and bolder, fueled by experiences, challenges, and the unwavering belief that one person, no matter how young, could spark change. Life is full of surprises, Emily whispered to herself, but love will always lead the way. She understood now that her journey was not just about proving others wrong or achieving success but about the love for community, family, and the planet that guided her every step. The road ahead was still long and full of unknowns, but Emily was ready to keep learning, creating, and inspiring. She knew setbacks would come, but so would hope, and with each challenge, she would grow stronger. The story that began with a question, what if a 9-year-old could prove the impossible, had blossomed into a legacy of possibility and courage. And as Emily smiled, surrounded by those who loved her, she knew this was only the beginning of many new stories yet to unfold. Months passed after Emily's national recognition, and though life had settled into a calmer rhythm, the spark inside her had only grown brighter. She was still just 10 years old now, but she walked with the quiet confidence of someone who had lived a lifetime of lessons. Her time in the spotlight had opened doors, but what she valued most were the moments that kept her grounded, the early morning walks with her dad, the spontaneous coding sessions with Mia, the quiet dinners with her mom, and the calls with Jamal to debate whether Mars or the Moon would make a better colony site. Yet deep in her heart, Emily knew something was shifting. One evening, while sketching ideas in her notebook, a new thought emerged: it wasn't enough to build solutions herself. If she wanted real change, she had to help others do it too. And not just in her country, but around the world. That's when the idea hit her like a bolt of lightning: a global youth accelerator for science and innovation. Not a camp. Not a club. A movement. A real, structured platform that would help kids like her, dreamers, tinkerers, oddballs, and outliers, turn their ideas into world-changing solutions. She called it Light Up. The name symbolized what she wanted it to be: a force that helped illuminate potential, especially in places often overlooked. Rural towns, refugee camps, inner cities, and schools without labs. She wanted kids from everywhere to feel like they had a shot. She pitched the concept to Dr. Mitchell, who immediately saw the vision and helped Emily lay out a plan. Light Up would combine mentorship, mini-grants, virtual labs, and annual summits to showcase projects and share progress. No gatekeeping. No age limits. Just pure ideas and purpose. Emily partnered with educators, nonprofits, and tech companies who shared her belief that innovation didn't belong to any one country, gender, or zip code. She even worked with software developers to create a Light Up platform that was mobile-friendly, available offline, and translated into 10 different languages. Within 3 months, Light Up received over 2,000 applications from children across 25 countries. Some had built simple irrigation systems to save family farms, others designed low-cost air filters to fight pollution in crowded cities. Emily read every single submission, often staying up late, completely captivated by what she saw. These weren't just smart kids. They were determined. Some had nothing but cardboard and wire, yet they were creating clean water devices, solar-powered carts, and communication tools for the deaf. Light Up's first round of grants was awarded in a live-streamed event, and Emily hosted it herself, standing behind a desk with maps and photos from every applicant's home. She didn't just call names, she told their stories. And by the end of the broadcast, something incredible happened. Tens of thousands of viewers from around the world donated to keep the program running. Foundations called. Journalists emailed. Even a few former critics changed their tone. Emily's vision had hit a nerve. But with growth came new tests. She had to manage legal logistics, cultural barriers, and time zones. It was hard, harder than launching her own project had been. At times, the pressure mounted to unbearable levels. There were days she cried in silence, unsure if she could keep it all moving. But every time she felt like giving up, she'd receive a letter. A drawing. A video message from a kid across the ocean saying, "Because of you, I believe I can build something too." And that was all it took. Emily's story had started as a girl challenging a tech giant. But now, she had become something much more, an enabler of others' dreams. She began traveling with her parents to different countries to meet Light Up participants in person. In South Africa, she visited a school where kids had used their grant to build battery-powered flashlights from scrap. In the Philippines, she saw a student's homemade drone deliver supplies during monsoon floods. In Detroit, a group of girls who watched her videos started their own robotics team and asked her to be their honorary coach. Everywhere she went, Emily reminded these young innovators that greatness wasn't about being the smartest in the room, it was about being bold enough to try, and humble enough to listen. When she returned home one evening, exhausted but glowing with stories, she sat on her bed and stared at the ceiling. "What now?" she whispered to the room. She had achieved more by age 10 than most did in a lifetime. But her spirit wasn't about accomplishments, it was about momentum. She didn't want her journey to be a peak. She wanted it to be a launch pad. That night, she drafted her next goal. She would build a permanent center for Light Up, an innovation hub with labs, workshops, and open access for kids worldwide. It would be the place where wild ideas met real tools. A place where failure was celebrated as part of learning. A place that didn't belong to anyone, but invited everyone. She pitched the idea in a now famous letter to a group of global philanthropists, closing with the words, "I don't want to be the only kid who gets this chance. I want to be the first of millions." Within 6 months, the first Light Up Global Center broke ground on donated land in Arizona. Solar-powered, modular, and student-designed, it was everything Emily had imagined. When the ribbon was cut, she didn't stand in the center. She handed the scissors to one of the youngest participants, a 7-year-old inventor from Guatemala who had once repaired his entire village's water pump using a spoon, glue, and an old battery. The crowd applauded, and Emily stood in the back, smiling quietly. She wasn't the story anymore. The movement was. Later that evening, as the desert sky darkened and the stars began to emerge one by one, Emily stood alone by the observatory dome on the property. She gazed upward, feeling once more that quiet pull of wonder and possibility. So much had changed in a short time, and yet the feeling was the same as it had been the day she first challenged Elon Musk's assumptions, not out of anger, but out of belief that the world had room for more voices, more visions, and more impossible things coming true. And though she was still just a girl with a notebook full of ideas, Emily knew something unshakable now: the future doesn't belong to the loudest, or the richest, or the oldest. It belongs to those willing to build it, brick by brick, and then hand the blueprint to someone else. Her legacy had begun, not in laboratories or competitions, but in classrooms, villages, rooftops, and hearts all around the world. And it would continue, not because she held on to it, but because she passed it on. The morning was quiet, the kind of stillness that makes everything feel possible. Emily stood at the edge of the newly completed Light Up Global Center, her sneakers pressed into the soft Arizona soil, her hair tied back, and her hands holding the same notebook she'd scribbled in since her very first idea sparked this journey. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting gold across the silver dome and the solar panels that lined the hills beyond it. Inside the building, the hum of equipment and voices of young inventors filled the halls. Over the past few months, kids from more than 40 countries had walked through those doors. Some came with blueprints, others with problems to solve, but all of them arrived with one thing in common: hope. Emily took a deep breath. She was still only 10. She still had homework, chores, and braces coming next month. But there was something in the way she carried herself now, something that hadn't been there before. Experience. Growth. Clarity. She walked through the main corridor where murals of past light-up projects lined the walls: solar desalination kits from Bangladesh, tree planting drones from Brazil, a clean cooking stove designed by a girl in Uganda. The success of the center had exceeded every expectation, and yet Emily never let it become about her. She called herself just the matchstick. It was the others, she said, who created the fire. Today was special, though. Emily was scheduled to give a keynote at the inaugural Light Up Global Youth Innovation Forum, hosted right here at the center. Thousands were attending in person, and even more would be tuning in online. World leaders, scientists, educators, and entrepreneurs had flown in, not just to witness young talent, but to support it. The idea of standing before that crowd, sharing her vision again, filled Emily with both excitement and anxiety. But there was something else too, something she hadn't told anyone. She was planning to make an announcement that would change everything again. As the time approached, she stood backstage, watching the final presentations wrap up. A group of students from India just demoed a rain-powered electricity generator using discarded plumbing pipes. The applause was thunderous. Yar. Mitchell appeared beside her, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "You ready?" she asked, her voice warm. Emily nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be." The lights dimmed. A hush fell over the crowd. And then her name was called. As Emily stepped onto the stage, a spotlight illuminated her small frame, but her presence filled the massive hall. She stood at the podium, looked out at the sea of faces, so many young, eager eyes, and smiled. "Hi, I'm Emily," she began, her voice clear and steady, "and I believe the future belongs to those who dare to build it differently." She spoke about the early days, about losing her best friend and turning that pain into purpose. She shared the doubts, the failures, the victories, and the quiet moments when quitting seemed easier than continuing. But then, she pivoted. "Today," she said, "I want to tell you something I haven't said out loud before." The room leaned in. "I'm stepping away from Light Up." A few gasps echoed. Emily smiled gently, nodding. "Not because I'm giving up. But because it's time to pass it on. Light Up was never supposed to be mine forever. It was supposed to be ours. And it's strong enough now to stand on its own." She went on to explain that a rotating council of youth leaders from every continent would now oversee Light Up, with adult advisors like Dr. Mitchell offering support but not control. She would stay involved, of course, mentoring, contributing, but she didn't want to be a bottleneck. "Leadership," she said, "isn't about holding the mic. It's about making sure others get one too." The audience erupted in applause. People were crying, clapping, smiling, some in disbelief that someone so young understood something so deeply. Emily continued, "So what's next for me?" A playful grin crossed her face. "Well, I'm going to middle school next year." "That should be wild." Laughter rippled across the crowd. "But I'm also working on something new, something small, something personal. A book for kids like me, who feel weird or too quiet or too loud or too different. A book that tells them they're not broken. That maybe their weirdness is just their gift waiting to grow." And then, her final words, "You don't need to be a genius. You don't need permission. You don't need a perfect plan. You just need a reason. And maybe a friend. Or a notebook. Or a really stubborn belief that things can be better." As she walked off stage, the standing ovation behind her felt less like a farewell and more like a beginning. Outside, the desert wind picked up slightly, tugging at the edges of her jacket as she walked out under the sky. She looked up again, those same stars that once called her to imagine something greater. Now, they seemed closer. Not because the stars had moved. But because she had. A few days later, back at home, Emily sat at her desk writing the first page of her book. Her little brother played in the hallway. Her parents were cooking dinner. Life felt, for once, simple. She wrote, "Once upon a time, there was a girl who liked to build things. Not because she wanted to be famous. But because she believed something beautiful could happen if she did." And just like that, the next story began. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?